If you keep waiting for the perfect moment to invest, there is a high chance you will wait forever. Markets are near highs, falling fast, crashing, or surrounded by awful news everywhere we look. Somebody on social media likely has a chart with 12 red arrows pointed toward his face that suggests civilization ends next Tuesday. There is always a reason to stay in cash until things feel better, and that's precisely the problem. Charles Schwab ran a valuable thought experiment called Does Market Timing Work? It compares a perfect timer, someone who invests immediately, a monthly investor, a consistently terrible timer, and someone who does nothing, someone who stays in cash, and the results may surprise you. Of course, the perfect timer does best. Fair enough. They also have a crystal ball and a superpower none of us mortals have. But the important part is this. Across Schwab's long historical comparisons, even the person who repeatedly invested at the worst possible time, every time, ends up with substantially more than the person who stayed in cash and never invested to begin with. So in other words, waiting to get started for whatever reason is usually the worst decision you can make. I'm DC Roth from the Bureau, and over the last few years, we've helped educate over 3 million people on money and markets here on YouTube. And today, we're going from zero with no brokerage account, no sensible structure, and no idea what any of this is to 100. By the end of this video, you'll have a brokerage account, a structure, a plan, know what to look out for, and in the best case, be an investor yourself. Now, to make it as simple as possible, we will do it together, step by step. Before we continue though, here's a very important rule. Only invest money you will not need for years. If a bad month in markets would make you miss rent, sell your car, or panic into a loss, that money has a different job. Markets do crash, and it's important to mention this directly instead of dancing around it. 2008 was brutal. 2020 was brutal. Both times, markets eventually recovered and went on to new all-time highs, but nobody can say with certainty it will never happen again. Past recoveries don't guarantee future ones. The point isn't that crashes don't hurt. They do. They really do. The point is that the investors who did best over the following decade were usually the ones who kept buying throughout all of the mess. So you can do all of this in one sitting, right now, in this very moment. Let's go. So the first and biggest decision is not which ETF to buy, it's whether this money has permission to be invested. So we have to start with consumer debt. Credit cards and high-rate personal loans charge interest that is real, reliable, and not impressed by your investing plans. Then, an emergency reserve that fits your life. There is no magic number here. Someone with a stable job and low costs may need less than someone self-employed and supporting a family. But just picture the classic nightmare. Your car breaks down and your landlord raises the rent in the same month. When it rains, it pours. If that scenario would force you to sell your investment at a random moment just to cover it, your buffer isn't big enough yet. This reserve literally exists so an emergency does not force you to sell your investments at the worst possible time. Next, keep short-term money out of the market entirely. A home deposit, tax bills, tuitions, or anything you need in the next few years should not sit in shares. And finally, choose an amount you can sustain in your worst month, not your average month, definitely not your best month. If that is $20, that counts. 50 as well, 100 as well. The most important thing is to start and never stop. That's the only way a snowball can grow to big sizes. Consistency beats lump sum for most people simply because a plan you actually stick with for 10 years always beats a bigger plan you abandon after 10 months. The goal is a plan that survives real life, doesn't hurt, and one that you don't feel at all. So please, before we continue, answer these 4 questions and answer them honestly. What expensive debt do you have? What cash buffer do you need? What money is needed soon? And what monthly amount is genuinely sustainable? That is your starting point. Okay, now to the exciting bit. Choosing your broker. A broker is the regulated company through which you can buy and hold investments. The app is just a shop window. The legal entity behind it matters way more. For European viewers, Trade Republic and Trading 212 are 2 very popular opinions. I personally use Trading 212, but for this walkthrough, I'm opening a fresh Trade Republic account so we can start with a clean canvas. No platform is sponsoring this video and neither one is the better broker in Europe. This honestly comes down to taste. If you're in the US, however, look at Fidelity, Charles Schwab, or Vanguard. Interactive Brokers is also strong but a bit more complex. Now, this is about the point where the same 3 questions come up constantly. So let's kill them. First, isn't this just gambling with extra steps? No. Gambling is a negative-sum game where the house is mathematically guaranteed to win over time. Owning a broad slice of global companies is a bet that human productivity, largely, keeps grinding forward over decades, which is a very different wager than a coin flip in a casino. Second, what happens if the broker itself collapses? Regulated brokers hold your shares and ETFs in custody, separately from their own balance sheets, specifically so that if the company goes under, your investments aren't part of what creditors can claim. Third, and this is probably the one that comes up the most, do you need a lot of money to start? No. Fractional investing means you can start with whatever you've generally got spare, even a modest weekly coffee budget's worth. And the mechanics work exactly the same whether you're investing $50 a month or $5,000. Sticking to the plan matters way more than the size. Okay, so now we just enter our details, have an ID or passport ready to go through the KYC process, and that's pretty much it. You'll also need to read and sign a couple of legal documents required for taxes and safety. Things like the regulated legal entities serving your country, how assets are held in custody, how taxes work where you live, and so on. Useful to go through in your own time, but for the sake of this video, I'll skip that section. One additional tip, most brokers have very good security, but it's never a bad idea to set up two-factor authentication. And obviously, never ever show your codes, account numbers, or ID documents anywhere, which is exactly why I'm keeping this part of the walkthrough private. Okay, the first time you open a broker, all screens look like they were designed by people who love chaos. Now, it might look slightly different depending on what your broker uses, but generally speaking, it's all the same. Let me quickly walk you through them. Now, as you can see, I funded my account with 1,500 euros. This 1,500 euros is my cash balance, money I deposited but have not yet invested. It is available cash, not in the market, so I can send it, spend it like regular money. And on most brokers, you earn interest on this cash. In my case, or in this case, it's a new customer rate of 3%, apparently subject to a cap and the usual terms and conditions and stuff. Still, that's a whopping 2.99% more than what my bank offers. The watch list is simply a list of assets you want to monitor, stuff like Apple, the S&P 500, Bitcoin, and so on. You do not own anything just because it appears there. Think of it as a shopping list. Now, your portfolio is different. It shows what you actually own, and right now, of course, that's still empty as I have not bought anything yet. After the purchase, the positions will all appear with their value and performance. Charts, percentage moves, heat maps are all available to get a quick sense of the overall market performance. Now, as you probably know, a stock is ownership in one company, so your result depends heavily on that single business. And trust me when I say it's incredibly tempting to think you could just pick the next great company yourself and skip diversification. Some people do this successfully, but the vast majority don't. So keep single stocks as the exception, not the plan. Diversification is key, and this brings us to indices. An index is a rules-based basket that tracks part of the market. You cannot buy an index directly, it is like a measuring stick. But an ETF is the product you can actually buy. It trades like a share, but holds many underlying securities and usually tracks an index. Think of the index as a recipe and the ETF as a finished dish. Now, crypto is an entirely separate asset class. It has nothing to do with stocks and, well, it comes with its own risks. Now, some people only focus on crypto. Those are usually not using a broker at all. Others don't own any. Most people probably own some. But if you don't feel like it, owning zero crypto is perfectly fine. That's a valid choice. Now, when you search S&P 500, you will see many ETFs. The S&P 500 tracks about 500 large US companies. The Nasdaq 100 is more growth and tech heavy. MSCI World covers developed markets and is currently very US weighted. FTSE All World or MSCI All Country World Index add emerging markets for broader global exposure. These are different tools. An ETF that tracks one of them is the product you can buy. And if we took MSCI World as an example, being heavy US weighted isn't just some grand political statement about America. These indexes use market cap weighting, meaning a company worth $2 trillion simply gets a bigger slice than one worth $20 billion. The index isn't voting on which country or company is morally superior, it's just following the size of the price tag. Now, before we buy any ETF, we open the fact sheet. This is where we can check the index it tracks, the ongoing cost, fund size, and whether it is accumulating or distributing. Those are typically marked as ACC and DIST. Accumulating means the fund reinvests any dividends automatically. Distributing means it pays them out to your cash balance instead. So dividends are cash a company sends shareholders out of its profits simply for holding a piece of it. We've made an entire video on this topic, which I'll link down below. This basically sums it up. Now, the important part, you do not need one universal portfolio. You need a structure that matches your time horizon and your ability to handle drops. A single broad global ETF is the simple version, and for most people watching, it is most likely the right one. What I'm building for this video is a tiny bit more involved because I want to show you how tilts and satellites work in practice. That being said, €1,000 goes into FTSE All World. That's roughly 2/3 of the entire portfolio, and it's the broad core doing most of the diversification work. €200 goes into an MSCI Emerging Markets ETF to deliberately increase exposure to markets like China, India, and Taiwan. Now, the remaining €300 goes into smaller satellites, 100 to Tencent, 50 into an AI ETF, 75 a uranium ETF, and 75 into an automation and robotics ETF. So single stocks like Tencent carry company-specific risks that diversified ETF simply doesn't. Your outcome starts depending heavily on one company's management, competitors, debt, and a long list of things you probably don't want to research. That's exactly why this satellite money is optional, not core. There is overlap here as well. Now, these satellites concentrate exposure rather than simply adding more diversification. That can help or hurt depending on how those areas will perform. Now, of course, this is not investment advice and not a recommendation to buy any of these. This basically reflects my own risk tolerance and interests. If you're not deep into the subject matter or believe in one of these themes, please leave them out. A single broad global ETF remains a perfectly valid portfolio. The structure matters more than the specific products. A diversified core that does most of the work plus smaller positions whose risks you actually understand. And one last thing, costs. A broker can say commission-free and still charge you through other ways. Commission-free does not mean cost-free. There is the explicit order fee, the spread, possible transaction costs, and the ETF's ongoing TER. Taxes are separate and country-specific, obviously. For Trade Republic, a single trade currently costs €1 under the default method, or €2 if you choose the exchange yourself. However, savings plan executions currently have no execution fee, and there is no custody fee, which is exactly why I will be using the savings plan. So on my phone, inside the app, I can set up the recurring plan. This is where the watch list becomes very handy. Search each product carefully and verify the exact name, index, and share class. Do not buy the first thing the app suggests. So I will be using a savings plan, so the €1,500 split automatically every month. 1,000 into FTSE All World, 200 emerging markets, 100 into Tencent, 50 AI, 75 uranium, 75 automation and robotics. Every month after payday, €1,500 will land and get split the same way into those same 6 products. No monthly decision, no staring at charts all day long. Automation removes the behavioral friction entirely, so I always try to do this with pretty much everything. I no longer have to wake up and decide whether the news feels sufficiently cheerful to proceed with my investment plan. It doesn't remove market risk or costs, obviously. It just turns a decision I already made into a process that doesn't need a monthly committee meeting in my head. And here's the simple logic underneath it. Buy the same amount every month, and some months you'll buy when the prices are relatively expensive, some months when they're relatively cheap, and over a year, that averages out without you ever having to guess which month was which. Nobody has to be a genius. The plan just keeps buying. This is how our snowball grows, and this is how we eventually turn on the compounding machine. Now, one thing to add, expect some kind of annual statement or a tax certificate from the broker summarizing what you bought, sold, and earned that year. Keep it. Your future self or your accountant will thank you when tax season rolls around and you're not digging through a year of email confirmations. So I'll run this exact plan at least for 12 months and report the real result a year from now. The idea is not to time the market, that's impossible. The idea is to have time in the market and let automation do the work. So set the date after payday, choose an amount you can sustain, and verify the product one last time. Then leave the plan alone unless your life changes. Review it once a while, not every day, and check whether your goals, tax situation, or risk tolerance have shifted. If your income rises and it fits your situation, bump the contribution before you spend it on lifestyle inflation. A few quick things to avoid because I've watched people talk themselves out of really good plans over these exact habits. Don't check the portfolio every single day. It turns a long-term plan into an emotional roller coaster for absolutely no benefit at all. Don't panic sell the first time you see red. That's usually the single most expensive decision in investing, and the first lesson we can all skip. Don't chase whatever asset is trending in your feed this week. By the time everyone's talking about it, a lot of the easy upside is usually already gone. But most importantly, don't stop the plan the moment life gets slightly less comfortable. That's exactly the emergency reserves job, not the portfolios. That is the system. You now know how to choose a broker, tell cash from a watch list from a real portfolio, and separate a stock, an index, and an ETF. You also know that diversification does not remove risk, and commission-free does not mean cost-free. But most importantly, you have a structure you can actually stick with. The automated monthly contribution keeps it moving no matter what happens. The first purchase does not need to be perfect. It needs to be understood, it needs to be affordable, and it needs to be repeatable. So pause here, complete the next unfinished step, and do not let the search for the perfect entry point, it doesn't exist, become another year of doing nothing. And if you're wondering how much you'd actually need to invest to live off dividends alone, I've got a full breakdown which you can find up here. For everyone watching, if you've got a broker you already use and swear by, or one you tell people to avoid entirely, please drop it in the comments. It's genuinely the fastest way for people watching this to compare notes beyond the two platforms I picked for this walkthrough. As always, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you again very soon.